Alright, loves, today I'm going to be showing you guys how I draw my portraits, step by step, the whole process, and just like explaining to you guys how I do it. Not really a professional by any means. This is just the process that works best for me. I am still learning, I just got good at portraits. But anyway, let's hop into it. So first of all, sorry for the terrible angle, but what I'm doing right now is I just like to take my reference photo and just kind of find all the shapes and stuff that I can within the face that I know I'm going to have to use when it comes to drawing the foundation of the face. And so that's what you see me in here doing. I draw all my lips with hearts, so that's why you see the hearts there. And then I just go in with the lines just to kind of know exactly where the placement is. It just kind of helps me seeing this cartoon version on top of the real reference of exactly how I want to draw my portraits. So yeah, I'm just going in adding all the shapes and just putting little shapes so I can know how to draw the sizes of the shading and everything. And then what I do from there, I just take then before I do that, I go back to my reference photo and I just kind of find the best lighting so I can see all the highlights and stuff. And then from there is when I transfer it onto my paper. And then so I'm going to start off with the circle because, it's kind of the base of a head. And then from there, I just go back and to transfer all those lines I put on top of the reference photo. I put those on my paper. And I do this really rough sketch. And I do it really light. That's why you guys can't really see it. So if I have any mess ups and stuff like that, I can easily go back and fix it. But if you kind of squint and look closely, you can see that I'm just copying everything that I put on the reference photo and putting it on there. And then once I pretty much have it on there, then is when I go back and I just try to make it more defined, make it look more realistic. Because at first it's I don't really care too much. I'm just trying to get those lines on this paper. And once I have those lines on that paper is when I try to go back in, and is when I'm zooming into the portrait. And I'm just really trying to match everything from the portrait, from the reference photo to the portrait photo. And so yeah, that's basically all I'm doing right here is just getting all of that correct and just really just comparing the reference photo. So yeah, and if you don't have a touchscreen laptop or iPad or something like that, you most definitely can just use the regular picture on your phone, or you can print it out and do it that way. Just print out two pictures, use one for to sketch on top of, and then one for the regular reference. But yeah, you don't have to have nothing fancy for this at all. It's really simple. And like I said, I'm not a professional by any means. It's just I watched a lot of tutorials on how to do portraits. It's just the one that works best for me. So anyways, back to the portrait. Once I pretty much got everything lined up, I kind of go back in to kind of just get the shape of the head correct. And you just see me going right now. I'm just correcting all of the major lines. That's why it's getting a little darker. And then I went in with the shapes of where the different shading was at. And I went ahead and drew that in. And so now what I'm about to do is make sure all of my pencils are nice and sharp. And make sure I have all my different graphite pencils. Because it's a little bit easier to use it when they're sharp. And it comes out more defined. And shading's a little bit easier when they're sharp. So anyway, what you're going to do first is, make sure all your pencils are sharpened. And so once you do that, what I'm going to do next is I'm just be going in with the darkest color. And I'm going to be going in and doing that. But first, I kind of just erase everything to make it a little lighter. And then that's when I go in with the darkest areas first and shading the darkest areas first. And I just go in from darker to lightest. I really wish I knew exactly which one I'm using. I want to say I'm using a 6B first, but honestly, I'm not sure. But yeah, just go in first with all the dark spots from your reference. So whatever darker areas you see on your reference, you can use, that's what you're shading in. Some references don't have too many dark spots, so this process probably not as long for yours. But this one has a ton. And I feel like that's why this portrait took so long, because it had so many dark spots. But yeah, that's what I'm doing right here. Alright, so now I'm like pretty much at the end of my shading. And I just wanted to point out, like, with the lighter areas that's like really light, I try to use like a gray. I don't necessarily use a graphite pencil. It's really just a regular gray, because it doesn't pick up too much and it doesn't really take away from the face. But as far as the rest of the shading, I do use a regular like graphite pencils, and I just kind of shade it in that way. And then areas of highlights, I just shade in, like I said, a regular gray, and it is very, very light. Like, you can barely see that's what I'm doing on here. And so from there, that's when I take either a cotton ball or like some tissue, and I just kind of smoothen everything out, and I just kind of blend the two. Now, some people, they don't like to shade it, and they like kind of leave it how it was previously. But me, I kind of like to go back in with a cotton ball or tissue and just kind of blend it. I don't use my fingers, because I learned that it leaves like grease spots, and it's not really good for long-term effects on the portrait. So we don't really use our fingers. You can use tissue, you can use a Q-tip, you can use cotton balls, and you can just go buy like a little shading tool that they have in most art stores. So whichever one works for you. Me personally, I just use tissue or Q-tip or cotton balls. But after I finish blending, I go back in with the darkest, and I just kind of go back in and make sure I redefine those darkened areas, because sometimes when you blend it, it kind of like takes away from it and it makes it flat. So then that's when I go back in with my pencils, and I just kind of go back over certain areas that are like really dark, or there are like really defined areas that are supposed to like stick out. I like to go back in with those. Go back in and shade those areas in again, just so that my face doesn't look like flat. Because sometimes when you blend it in too much, it takes away from the three-dimensional aspect of it. So that's why I kind of make sure I go back in and add more shades to it to kind of bring that back. And then you just kind of see me going back in and making sure, what I'm doing is looking at my reference. And it's certain areas that are like a little darker, that when I blended it in, it kind of became like the same color. And so you have to be careful with that. Some people don't like to do a general blend like I just did. Some people like to do like a section by section blend. Me personally, I just like a very broad general blend. I kind of blend everything at the same time. And then I just kind of go back in and fix my highlights and my shading. And then for areas that are like really light, that pretty much look like they're white, that's when I go in with the eraser and I just kind of erase it and make those areas pop a little bit more. And yeah, just adding like the little finishing touches to it and shading it out more. And that's what I'm doing right there, going back in with the eraser and making the highlights pop more. And when I do my eraser, I don't do like a full like straight line across. I kind of do them in like little skip marks, if that makes sense. But yeah. And then you just kind of see me adding, just at this point, I'm just kind of making sure the detail is right and all of that. Going over the outside. Because when you blend, sometimes you do get like those little smudge marks on the outside. And so I want my reference to have like clean lines. So I just go back on the outside and clean those up. And then I shade everything in. And I kind of blend it. And then I just shading. So all I'm doing right now at this point is just making sure everything is as close to the reference as I possibly can get it. And then once I finish the shading, I'm going to go back in and add like, the clothes and stuff like that. And things of that nature. But yeah, first got to get the shading correct. Alright, so this is pretty much the finished product. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, trust the process and be patient with yourself. It takes a minute to learn this. But yeah, thanks for watching.